This is Resonance, a podcast for leaders that unpacks the power of song, silence, and strategy.
We believe that great leadership begins with deep listening, not just to others, but to the still small voice within.
It's not just about being a successful leader, it's about being soulfully aligned as well.
In a world moving fast, Resonance invites you to pause and reconnect with purpose, people, and possibility.
We'll dive into some cool stories, celebrate with friends, and dig deep into the music too. 'Cause song has a way of saying what words cannot alone.
So whether you're leading a business, a team, or just trying to lead your own life with more meaning, this is Resonance.
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 Hey, welcome to Resonance, a podcast that connects soul, story, and music to success in business and life. And we've got some wonderful people here. Mike, the monk guy, Farrell, and Steve. I don't think you have a catchy middle name thing in there. Steve, country rock star music dude from Mississippi, Azar. Steve Azar is the man, the legend. L'uomo la leggenda, they would call you in Italian. I don't know how we got there.
Came out of nowhere.
I know, came out of nowhere, but this is what happens. But we're going to have a good time, and we're going to be talking about a powerful subject today. But to introduce that subject, we're going to go right on over to Mike. What are we talking about today, my friend?
All right. Hey, guys. Okay. So today we're going to talk about the topic of generosity. And generosity from a standpoint of leadership. So not only the fact of when we talk about generosity, you typically talk about kind of the giving aspect of financially, time, those kinds of things. But we're going to go even a little deeper than that. We're going to go deeper from a standpoint of what generosity means from a leadership perspective, and how you make people feel, how you treat people, how you engage with people, how you listen to people, Steve's favorite word. And we're going to really get into that aspect of it. So to kind of kick this thing off, I want to talk a little bit about just recently, Steve was up here in the great city of Sioux Falls, South Dakota with us for, I think, the 10th year in a row to do a show that he does here. And I had asked him previous to him coming if he would be willing to come to the grade school that my grandchildren are at, Christ the King Elementary School, and sing his state song, One Mississippi, with them and engage with them. And Steve was very gracious and didn't even think twice about it. He said, absolutely, it's on the calendar. And so we went there this past week, and Steve engaged with the kids, and it was absolutely magical to see what happened when Steve got with those kids. The kids had learned his song. They'd been practicing his song for the better part of 2 weeks. And so we talked a little bit about Steve coming up with the song, and Steve gave him a little background on Mississippi and told him what a slug burger was and all kinds of fun stuff like that.
That's one of the concerning terms in the song.
Right. I don't know if any of the kids went home and requested slug burgers that night, but
you gotta be there.
What was really cool to me was to see, and obviously Steve was incredibly generous with his time and going there. But the other thing that I think was really telling to me was how Steve made the kids feel. It was really this engagement with them, this connecting with them. And I think that's a whole aspect of generosity that we don't talk much about sometimes, and especially when we talk about it from a leadership perspective. So, Steve, tell us a little more about your trip to Sioux Falls.
Well, first of all, I appreciate that. Second of all, 10 years we've been doing this annual singer-songwriter, bringing a couple of hit songwriting buddies from Music City or wherever they are at this point in their lives that made a big impact on the world of music. And, it's nothing better at times, nothing better than to have a quiet room and hear the stories behind the hits and behind the songs that are hits right now or hits 30 years ago or something they just wrote or we just wrote, and I'm just a fan of it. And it's how when we were in Nashville and we were all hanging out together and none of us had hits, we were always, who's going to be the first one? We sort of held each other up with hope. We were like one person, there was a bunch of us and all of us ended up having hits, which is, a lot of them were just wanted to be songwriters. I wanted to be a songwriter. I wanted to be an artist songwriter. I wanted to do both. And a few of us were able to accomplish that. And then the rest of them were able to accomplish being hit songwriters. And stay at home with their families all the time and just do that. But first of all, always love doing that. Been coming to Sioux Falls for a lot of years, guys, doing it. Started with Chris Cheddar, a former LPGA star who's my partner. A lot of times during the year, we have grudge matches, and of course, I have her on my side. Why would I not? And I met her. She used to bring me into a charity event for after school programs at the YMCA that we'd raise money for. I'm a big fan of after school programs, always have been. Kids that aren't in sports, or maybe it's time of the year when sports, there's nothing really going on. And that's the time between 3 and 5:30, 6 o'clock when you 6 o'clock when you can get in all sorts of trouble.
Mhm.
And also it lets you get to know your teachers better because they're usually the mentors afterwards, and you sort of get to know them at a different level rather than the classroom. And I always felt like that was pretty magical too. Anyway, Sioux Falls is like a second home. You know that, Mike. And
Absolutely.
it's
Yeah.
been a blessing to do that. Generosity wise, I feel like I was the one that was blessed and grateful. It doesn't feel like I'm doing anything and not giving anything ever. I feel like I'm the one receiving all the love and joy from these sweet kids. And I've been doing this in Mississippi, and I've said this. There's a power about Madison Square Garden. You dream of playing that, the Rose Garden, and the the Boston Garden. And after doing all that and feeling that energy, which was amazing, right? It was amazing. But there's something powerful about being with these kids, and especially when you're in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and they're singing the official state song of Mississippi. So, which I've been so grateful to have penned. But so to me, I see the generosity part, but I see it more from them giving me the love and making me feel good. And especially when they did the little prayer at the end, they did the blessing prayer to me and they sang to me. And man, I tell you what, that was hard not to just bawl. I looked
You
at you,
bet.
you were watering up, and you know, I'm always grateful to share our state song, of course, but to do it in South Dakota was just cool.
Yeah. It was all either one of us could do. It's a good thing we didn't look at each other more than once.
No, I know. The kids. It's all to me. It's what it's all about now. They're the ones coming up the pike now. They're in the pipe. They're the ones that are going to be, where we are someday. Hopefully, if they have good health and you pray for that. But it's awesome.
Yeah.
And what I always say, I feel like the greatest gift that you can receive is to give. I
Yeah.
mean, that crazy
Absolutely.
sounding.
No, it's not. The thing I'm kind of keen on in this story is just how powerful music was to open up the hearts and minds of those kids. And so they had a couple of weeks, right, to
Yep.
practice and learn that song. And so they're thinking about things but they're feeling it. It's not like reading a book. It's not like anything else. Music comes at your brain in a completely different way than all the other stimulus in the world. And so music was the shoehorn. It was the wedge that opened up these kids to the potential of, and then when you walk in the room, it's got to be like, oh my, it sort of completes the circuit of this is the guy who pulled all this together. But
Isn't it
music is that powerful.
It is powerful, but you're right about that. You said something there was very interesting. I got to tell you, I just feel like that there's
It bypasses your conscious mind. You get
yes,
it it
yes,
it it it's like not an argument, it's not discussion, it's about a feeling. It hits you with a feeling. And that's why people can listen to a song and, in 5 bars they know whether they like it or not.
yeah, yeah,
It's like, oh, well, because it's about, does it register? Does it resonate? There's that word again,
yeah,
with my feeling and how I'm feeling right now.
right, right.
And I would take that idea of the feeling, and when we talk about generosity, generosity is how we make people feel. And
Nah.
from a leadership perspective,
Yeah, let's go into that.
well, you can give your time and your talent and your treasure and all those kinds of things, but if you're doing it inauthentically, if you're doing it to just make yourself look good, then it really isn't generosity. And when you think about doing something like that from a leadership perspective, whether it's one on one, whether it's with your team, whether it's with an executive group, a board, or the entire organization, generosity is how you make people feel, how you connect with them, how you engage them, how you listen to them. All of those aspects of generosity are so important from a leadership perspective. I think we have a tendency to kind of pigeonhole generosity into the charity, box. And generosity is so much more than that. It's really how we make people feel. And so, Randy, talk a little bit about from that aspect. You've worked with lots of leaders before and probably seen lots of them that have tried to do the generosity thing, and maybe it wasn't so generous.
Right. I want to jump in, and I want you to talk about a specific person who I've gotten to spend time with because of you, Steve Swafford. I feel like that guy, he leaks out. It's just, he's constantly dripping of generosity. He just, when you're talking to him, the way I saw him talking to all the employees at the credit union in Alabama, there was something about him that never changed. And it was so warm, and it was for everybody.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And a very good case study. Steve Swafford is the CEO of Alabama Credit Union, based in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. But I don't know if they're all over the state, but they're pretty close. And I met him, back in maybe early 2002, 3, 4. I've known him for a long, long time. And he has been consistent the whole time. And he grew that credit union from being kind of a small, sort of fragile university-related credit union into a statewide, strong financial institution that looks like it's going to make the turn into the next generation, which is extraordinarily difficult these days. And you're right. It's because it's not about just being good-hearted, because he's a tough businessman. I will say that too. It's not like, and I think this is one of the things that we should point out, that being a generous leader does not mean that you're a wimpy leader. It does not mean that you're a passive leader. In fact, it means that you are usually a person who is looking at a much bigger picture. And so that was one of the things that really struck me about Steve when I first met him, was he was always looking for the potential in people and in systems. It wasn't just what it was giving him today. It was, what's the potential? What could we do with this? How much further could we go and grow with this? There's that piece of it. The other piece is he's just he's funny. He's relaxed. He doesn't get too worked up. I don't think I've ever heard him yell. I think that if he disagrees with something, though, you'll know. He'll go, I don't think that's a good idea, and here's why. It's all about just kind of the discourse of it. He's inviting he listens, for gosh sakes. And so I think that's all part of it. But Steve is one of those guys where he can't not be that way. He has to do that because it's who he is. And that circles around to one of the other big pieces for generosity that I think is critical. And Mike, you were just hinting at this. If you're faking it, we'll smell it a mile away, right? Mm-hmm. It shows up as BS from the get-go. So authenticity is this crucial element that's there. And I've talked to some people. I'm doing a bunch of work now with folks that are doing more community engagement work and trying to deal with things like, when you look at the statistics around single moms in this country, it is brutal to be a single mom. It really doesn't matter how much money you make, but the truth of it is vast majority, not a vast majority, like 40 some odd % of single moms are below poverty line. And so when you start talking about 40% below poverty and they have a kid or more and they have to work, and so that means they have to get daycare, and sometimes you can't get the daycare you're working at night. So how do you find daycare at night? I mean, the challenges are just overwhelming. And so when you find people there's some people who go, yes, I'll be happy. What can I do for you? Well, let me write a check, and we'll get a picture of a big check. And then we'll say, yep, we wrote this check. Here you go. And sure, okay, don't not do that. I'm not saying, but there's a world of difference between that and the person who really tries to understand, hey, if we were able to help subsidize childcare for this segment of people where that would be a worry that could take off their plate, that would be huge. One of the groups I was just working with is really interested in this idea of financial trauma. And what they're saying is that when you go through bankruptcy or some other kind of terrible thing that's occurring, it's traumatizing in the same way, some other horrible thing that happens in your life, a car accident or some other thing. And so trauma affects your brain. That's the definition of the word. Your brain changes. And so I've got people that are in financial institutions that are saying, what can we do about financial trauma? How can we help people that are going through this horrible gateway into depression and other bad behavior that can come from it? That's when you see the authenticity, and it's about really connecting with the problems that people are experiencing.
A good sample size for me, like Steve Swafford, my father-in-law, Charles Nabholz of Nabholz Construction, which has really been blowing up over the last couple of decades. and then the former CEO of UPS, David Abney. They all are big in our foundation, but they both are incredible, generous men. But obviously, when it comes to the work part, they're able to use that generosity. But at the same time, they're there to do a job, and they are the leader of the band. And so there's going to be a sternness, that it has to be. It's just the way that they handle it. And I feel like when they walk in the room, the first thing you feel, like you said, is generosity. And I got to be honest with you, all the greatest artists that I've been able to know over my career, besides working really hard, which everybody that reaches to a certain level of success, you can tell how hard they work, but they're all very generous. These artists, it's amazing that you bring this up, Mike, that this is the topic of the day, because I feel like that is a common thread with any successful artist, and how they treat their band, how they treat their fans, how they treat their management, how they treat everybody, and I just think that makes a lot of sense. And there's the common thread between what you guys do and what I do.
Right.
That's exactly
And
right.
I think this whole idea, I talk about the monk principle of intention.
Mm.
It's what is the intention of the gifts of generosity, you know, if it's just to build up your ego, then, fine, go ahead and do it, but it's not doing anything good for your organization, for your people, for anything that's going to have any impact down the road. Anybody, I'm not saying anybody, but anybody can write a check.
Yep.
But if
It's
it's
like
that check,
junk food, though. It looks
yeah.
like food, but when you eat it, it doesn't give you anything,
Right,
really.
exactly. And I think you talk about that common thread, Steve, that runs through the artists that that are that way. I can say that common thread is also through many of the leaders that I've worked with over almost 40 years. You can tell when they have that intention that generosity is just a part of who they are from a standpoint of how they treat people and how they treat people across the entire spectrum, whether it's customers, whether it's employees, whether it's vendors, shareholders, stakeholders, whatever. The intention is always the same. It's always something that has a common thread through it that's constant. They're constantly doing it the same way over and over and over again. And when they're doing it with that type of intention, then the generosity becomes powerful, because not only does it impact the people that they're engaging with, those people begin to impact others in their circles as
Yes.
well. And that's the beauty of that idea of generosity.
And that's the gift
It
that keeps on giving, right?
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And it can spark, when that happens, when that spirit of generosity gets let loose inside an organization, it's amazing what it will do for things like innovation and team support and the I've got your back kind of values that most organizations are looking for. I was in a conversation with a board of directors a few years ago, and the board was, I think, realistically asking the CEO, who was making a big push to really engage community at a much deeper level. And one of the board members was saying, well, what does that look like? I mean, what are you actually saying you're going to do? What does that mean? And without missing a beat, the CEO leaned over and he said, I don't know exactly, but I can tell you it means that we are going to be shoulder to shoulder with the community in every major challenge this community faces. If it's a flood, we're going to be standing with them. If it's some other kind of disaster, we're going to be standing right there with them. It's not going to be about writing a check. We may do that too, but we're going to be down there shoveling sand into bags to keep the river from flooding or whatever it is. And the phrase shoulder to shoulder really meant something to me because it gets right to what Mike just said. And that really revealed the intent that CEO had. It wasn't about just, oh, let's get some good PR. Let's just see if we can get some points in our, piggy bank because people think that we're good people. No, it was about, we're going to show up. We're going to be there physically. And we're going to put ourselves on the line with this community. We see if the community succeeds, we succeed. If the community fails, we
I
fail.
love hearing
And
that. I mean, yeah.
yeah,
I think another great example of that is, Steve, with your Viking show in Greenville and what you've done for the community there. I mean, talk a little bit about that, because I would guess, and I don't know this for a fact, but I would guess that you didn't start that whole thing just to have another show on the river.
No, 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 no. This was amazing. But talk about generosity. When we had the tornado hit Rolling Fork, Mississippi, it was devastating. It's a very small community, but it wiped it out. And the first thing that one of the head guys at Viking, who we were developing our show together, and we'd already had the success and obviously gotten to a point where we were all really like celebrating this thing is working and let's keep rolling. But they immediately said, Steve, can you help us, with getting food, supplies? We want to send a quality food truck there. Do we need to send money? What do we need to do? So they were so community minded because they know that when they come to town, they invest in the community. They invest in the people, and they do that with their pocketbooks. They're not afraid to pay, and they want everybody to do really well. And I think that's another credit to them. They're just special. Viking special, guys. I read a big article on them yesterday that was sent to me, and it was really interesting about how they do what they do. And I called my buddy Wesley Smith, who we created the show together, and just the whole event together. And I said, isn't it funny that we sort of just ran right into exactly what we do, what you and I have been doing is exactly what they do. And that's why it's been so successful. And we also love working with them. Pearl River Resort, same way. I talk about people in my lives that I've gotten to work with now. My team is Super Talk. The list goes on and on. I mean, Visit Mississippi, everybody that I'm working with right now. We've talked about this on previous episodes and it's funny, they're all very generous in spirit. What you're saying, I'm drawn to them and I'm in love with them, the way they do things and the people that are there that I'm involved with. And I can't wait to talk to them. It never feels like work because we're all being successful together and we're all getting to enjoy it and smile and talk about other things. We can get down to the nitty gritty, but the nitty gritty never feels like there's any pressure, to it. It's just been wonderful to work with people that are generous in spirit.
It's a tribute to Steve's success. And Mike, I bet you feel the same way when you get the opportunity, the joyful opportunity to work with people like that. And you don't have to suffer the fools and ego freaks and whatever that are out there. Because I have a family member who was recently in a job for a long while, and didn't really seem like a happy guy to me. And then he left that job, and I saw him a couple of months after that, and it was like, you're a different person. When you get away from a toxic environment like that, and he didn't realize how much it was screwing up his mind and life to be in a world where there was no generosity of spirit in the organization, and there was intent, but the intent was all nasty.
Exactly.
It was like, I'm going to get mine first. And if you're not here, then, it's just like, that will just wear you down, suck your will to live for sure. And you don't realize how much that just kind of burns up parts of your potential. Certainly doesn't make you want to go the extra mile in the organization or do anything innovative. And so when you look at the statistics nationally, the lack of engagement at work, we've talked about this a little bit, is profound. And so the opportunity here is create that reason for people to want to be there and to work side by side with the people they're working with. And that's what you're doing.
Yeah. And I think what's cool, beyond the relationship you have with Viking, Steve, is the relationship you have with your community, with Greenville, and the things that you're doing and continuing to try to do to build up the community. To kind of bring them back to the glory days, if you could do that. I mean, it really, that I think that's higher level generosity.
What's amazing is we have so much to celebrate, and then we have a platform. Whenever we get an opportunity and a platform to do it, it just seems to work. It comes from a very, 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 very historical, cultural, but honest place. And those three things together, when they collide, well, to me, it's always magic.
So there's a company called CoreLogic, and they're a huge coding company. And what they did was they decided they needed more coders. And so what they did was they started a coding academy. It's called the Basecamp Coding Academy, and it's in Holly Springs, Mississippi. And if you are recommended by a high school teacher to go to this academy after you graduate, it's a 1-year program, 365 days, and you work 5 days a week learning how to code, and it's free.
Wow.
And so everything is offered by scholarship. And so, when you talk to the people that are running Basecamp Coding Academy, one of their secrets is they've created a job skill so that if Randy went to the Basecamp Coding Academy and I lived in some other little town in Mississippi, there's a good chance I could get a job without having to leave that little town in Mississippi.
Yeah.
And so now all of a sudden I'm going to go and I'm going to start making $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year in that town. And so they're trying to say, by putting these skill sets into place in Mississippi, they're not only going to help that kid, but they're actually going to begin changing the economic vitality of whole communities. And that's one of the kind of secret goals of what Basecamp Coding Academy is all about. Check them out. They're online. And the other one I think is another great place is the Sunflower Freedom Project, which is also in the Mississippi Delta. And if you walk into their place, you walk in and there's pennants all over the wall of like Harvard and Penn State and wherever. And so these kids are coming on their own time after school, just like, the after school program, and they're reading the books that they're going to need to get admitted into these schools. And each of those pennants is there because one of those kids actually got into one of these top tier schools. And so Sunflower Academy, and you know what they said? Well, I said, so what is it about academics? And they said, it's about life, man. It's about some kids going to need, you need more skills in math. So we're going to work on that. Other kids are they've never actually been, into a big city. And so we're going to talk about, getting over the fear of just working in non-rural Mississippi, but a beautiful organization, beautiful people doing amazing things. Wow. And it is just so that kid is going to get the value, but it's like, wow, the whole community is going to benefit.
Are these foundation driven, Randy, or no?
Yes, I'm not entirely sure. I think there's probably, they're all 501c3. I mean, they're all not for profits. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
But really, really amazing. And they kind of grew out of just this need. We need this. Let's do it. And CoreLogic had the wisdom to say, yeah, what the heck? And I think of those kids that go through the Basecamp piece, I think they're 100%. If you make it through the program, you got a job.
Wow.
So it's just like, and people are watching. It's like, okay, I'll take the next 5 people you spit out, shoot them to me.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great segue too, to talk, Steve, a little bit about your foundation, the St. Cecilia Foundation, and been around since I think 2006 is what you said. Talk about that generosity and what that foundation has done, not only what you and Gwen have done, which has been amazing, but all of the support that you've gotten from everybody else that participates in that between the Delta Soul Classic and even prior to that. And then talk a little bit about what it does for the communities that you're serving there.
I started going first to Gino Torretta, won the Heisman back in the days in Miami. He would have a charity event. Then Jim McMahon from the 85 Bears, of course, everybody knows Mac. There was just the Murray brothers are on their 25th anniversary, Bill Murray and his brothers. My buddy Chris Seeley that runs it. We all became friends at these events. There was one on the islands of St. Thomas, and we got to go to the schools for these after-school programs and see what they were doing. That's where I met the great Reggie Smith, who's never missed our charity event. Tim Fox had played for the New England Patriots and the Ohio State Buckeyes, All-American, as he says. But a lot of our friends, Richard Karn from Home Improvement, Gary Valentine, all these guys, John Daly, whoever, that love to give and give up their time. Selfishly, we have a great time together, but I got to tell you, it's the volunteers, the committee every year. There's so many people that it takes to do it right and get it done right and help have it flow, especially when you're coming in from a very, very long way away to get to Greenville. We're not easy to get to. Don't you laugh, Randy, I don't want to see it, but we're not easy to get to. And because of that, once you get here, we want to make sure that generosity is the key to everything we do, compassion, and we don't have red ropes. So there's no VIP rope. Everybody's a VIP. I feel like the 30 plus celebrities we bring in and all the big sponsors, you can't do one without the other, sitting there weighing them out. And the beautiful thing is the relationships that have been developed with everybody. There was a group from Kentucky that we call them the Kentucky Bourbon Drinkers. Bunch of friends of ours from here, Marshall Henderson, who was an Ole Miss legend, who just ruined their day when he went to Romp Arena, and he was very vocal about it in the basketball arena, was a special basketball player. And now those Kentucky Wildcats have become basically one of their best friends. They're best friends. They've been to the baby showers and the weddings, and we all have. And it's an amazing thing to watch that aspect of the relationships that are being built because of everybody's there in the name of generosity of spirit. But you can't do it without volunteers and committee members who every year decide, I'm going to do transportation. I'm going to do, I'm going to book all the flights. I'm going to handle this and that, And, it's crazy the work that goes in, even when you're on autopilot. We're on our 15th year coming up for the Delta Soul Celebrity Golf and Charity event. before we started that in 2012 when I moved back to Mississippi. But before that, in 2006, Gwen kept going. My wife Gwen kept going. You need to start the foundation now. We got to do it. And I said, I haven't arrived like I want to. I want to be a little more consistent in my career before I do it. And she goes, you're going to say this for the rest of your life. It's time. And so she said, it's game time. We formed our 501c3. And then we used to do like the sports challenge, the Steve Azars, CMA, it was Music Fest weekend, CMA, and I was sponsored by ExxonMobil at the time, ExxonMobil Sports Challenge. And we would do all this crazy stuff like Battle of the Network Stars with a lot of famous quarterbacks and athletes coming in from all over. And then we'd go raise a little money at BB King's, and then we'd send the money back to the Mississippi Delta, which is our mission for sick, disadvantaged, and of course, children, and of course, a heavy emphasis on the arts, because I feel like that's what they have seemed to take out of schools. It's a natural resource for us.
You were talking about something that I think is super important. The people that volunteer to do the flights and the travel and the bus and the whatever, the catering. There was a consultant I heard who came from Nike. His name was Kevin Carroll. I guess he may still be out there or not. Very impressive young man. And he said a phrase that I really liked. He said, what you want to look for in a search for excellence is the willingness to do the lonely work. And that phrase really connected with me. And what you're talking about are the people who don't need to be in the spotlight, but they're going to be the ones that get it done. Nobody is going to be, there's no great applause because they did these 900 things, but all of a sudden everything is taken care of and something magical has occurred because those people have done the lonely work. And I look at that now as a measure of integrity in a person. Are you willing to do the lonely work? Are you willing to do the things that you're not going to get credit for? There's no visibility to it.
I'm going to tell you something that we make sure of, that there's no one that anybody that does the lonely work, that everybody knows who did it. So, and it's interesting you're saying that, because I feel like those relationships that have been built have been special as well. They're extra special. So we literally include everybody that's helping as their celebrity, everybody that's sponsor as their celebrity, everybody, so there's just no VIP rope with anybody. So I'm glad you bring that up, because it lets us know. I think that we're doing it a little different in that regard. And I've seen the relationships build from the person that's doing the loneliest job that you're not supposed to know, but yet is like a fan favorite. They're like fan favorites because they know how hard they've worked. And so we don't hide them, I guess, is the best way.
I love it.
And I think, you talk about that lonely work, and getting back to this idea of intention. A great leader is one that does that lonely work when nobody's watching, when nobody knows what's happening, and yet they're still doing it. They're still practicing that generosity. It might be one-on-one, might be, something that they've done that nobody else knows about. And again, it gets back to that whole idea of intention. What is the intent behind the action? And those great leaders that exercise generosity are the ones that do it with the intention of doing the right thing and making people matter.
You're making a great point now. There's a handful of them that never tell me what went wrong, seriously went wrong, until like 9 months later. Maybe we start talking about the next Delta Soul. So, and how could you not tell me that? And they said, because we didn't want to tell you that. And so they're bearing all of it themselves. And a lot of this stuff has been crazy, like crazy stuff. And it was a heavy burden on them, but they weren't afraid to lift it, Pretty amazing. Pretty amazing that you bring that up.
And so there's a correlation, isn't there? I mean, so if you have this sense of generosity and spirit, and you look at people that are very successful in business, there's a good chance they're going to have that. And so does the generosity lead to the success, or does the success lead to the generosity? And the answer is yes.
Absolutely.
I think those things interact with one another in a bit of a dance, and I think that when I look at people who are, for example, out of work, or they're struggling to find, okay, what's the next thing I'm going to do? And they're not getting the traction that they want to get by sending out their resume or whatever. I will often encourage them to just go volunteer.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've got time, go volunteer, go ahead and, take 4 hours a day or a week or whatever and go volunteer. And I have no science behind this, but I cannot tell you how many people have said a month after doing that, it was like, I met so-and-so when I was doing so-and-so, and then I got this new offer. And it's just the network to open up. So as soon as they were able to get out of their own head and get out into the world and actually do something, boom, good
Hey,
things
by
happen.
the way, it's equally as hard to get to Eugene, Oregon, and to Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And here, you got to know that. You know that line. Wait,
Steve had to do the Hertz dash through the Dallas airport. So,
oh man.
gosh.
Well, maybe that's why we live in these places, though. I mean, truly. I like my urban cities and I like all of that too. But to me, Eugene is just the right size. It's it's big enough for us to get some mainstream entertainment through here. It turns out we have a pretty good football team this year.
Yeah, but you pull for the other team. What are you doing?
Yeah. Talk about a homer.
No, you don't. No, you don't. You're a duck. You're a duck.
I'm a big time duck. Yeah.
But you were wearing
I had an orange number on my shirt for heaven's sake. That was wrong.
Black.
But I'll give love to Oregon State all day long. See, that is one of the differences between us Oregon folks. And
Hey, I want to ask you something. Have you ever seen in your life somebody that is an Ole Miss fan wearing a Mississippi State jersey?
I have not a real Ole Miss fan.
Vice versa. It ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, I hung out with hippies and lawyers though at Ole Miss, so if they were dressed, it was a good value. That was.
All right, fellas.
I got a big old closet.
I think we're going to wrap this episode up on generosity. I think, Randy, give us one last point.
Well, go today. Don't wait. Just do it now. Go do that thing and don't worry about whether you're going to get credit for it. Go do that little tiny thing that's going to make your spouse feel better. And it can be a tiny, tiny act. Small gestures of generosity build up. But don't wait. Don't go. Just start now. Doggone it.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, that's a wrap on another episode of Resonance. And you can catch the Resonance episodes at resonanceleader.com or at any of the major podcast platforms. I think we're on all of them. At least we're on all of them I've ever heard of. And
please share, leave a like, do all that stuff.
Yeah, leave comments. And if you want to watch the video version, go to YouTube. We've got the YouTube channel there.
Good pockets. I leave good comments. Yeah.
All right. Take care, guys. We'll see you next episode.
Blessings.
Thanks for listening to Resonance. Find us at resonanceleader.com.